Barry Fairbrother did not want to go to dinner. He had endured a thumping headache for most of the weekend and was struggling to make a deadline for the local newspaper. However, his wife had been a little stiff and uncommunicative over lunch, and Barry deduced that his anniversary card had not mitigated the crime of shutting himself away in the study all morning. It did not help that he had been writing about Crystal, whom Mary disliked, although she pretended otherwise. "Mary, I want to take you out to dinner," he had lied, to break the frost. 19 years, kids. 19 years, and your mother's never looked lovelier. Mary had softened and smiled. So Barry had telephoned the golf club because it was nearby, and they were sure of getting a table. He tried to give his wife pleasure in little ways, because he had come to realize, after nearly 2 decades together, how often he disappointed her in the big things. It was never intentional. They simply had very different notions of what ought to take up the most space in life. Barry and Mary's 4 children were past the age of needing a babysitter. They were watching television when he said goodbye to them for the last time, and only Declan, the youngest, turned to look at him and raised his hand in farewell. Barry's headache continued to thump behind his ear as he reversed out of the drive and set off through the pretty little town of Pegford, where they had lived as long as he had been married. They drove down Church Row, the steeply sloping street where the most expensive houses stood, in all their Victorian extravagance. And solidity. Around the corner by the mock Gothic church, where he had once watched his twin girls perform Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and across the square, where they had a clear view of the dark skeleton of the ruined abbey that dominated the town's skyline. Set high on a hill, melding with the violet sky. All Barry could think of, as he twiddled the steering wheel, navigating the familiar turns, were the mistakes he was sure he had made. Rushing to finish the article he had just emailed to the Yarville and District Gazette. Garrulous and engaging in person, he found it difficult to carry his personality into paper. The golf club lay a mere 4 minutes away from the square. Oh, I lost my spot. A little beyond the point where the town petered out on a final wheeze of old cottages, Barry parked the people carrier outside the club restaurant. The birdie and stood for a moment beside the car. While Mary reapplied her lipstick, the cool evening air was pleasant on his face. As he watched the contours of the golf course disintegrating into the dusk, Barry wondered why he kept up his membership. He was a bad golfer. His swing was erratic and his handicap was high. He had so many other calls on his time. His head throbbed worse than ever. Mary switched off the mirror light and closed the passenger side door. Barry pressed the auto lock on the key ring in his hand. His wife's high heels clacked onto the tarmac. The car's locking system beeped, and Barry wondered whether his nausea might abate once he had eaten.